With the reveal of Bravely Default 2, you may be looking for a good traditional JRPG to tide you over until its 2020 release date. A great option is Octopath Traveler. Originally released in July of 2018, it was developed by Square Enix and Acquire. While the Nintendo Switch already has a growing library of great JRPGs, Octopath Traveler had a lot of hype because it was a game developed by Square Enix and its use of 16 or 32-bit graphics or sprite/pixel art, however you prefer to describe it, that looks more like a Final Fantasy VI than a modern JRPG. While Square Enix has published other well-received JRPGs on the Switch, such as Lost Sphere and I Am Setsuna, for this they are more involved in the development side, lending the game more clout and exposure to more gamers. This video will be more deep and comprehensive compared to my rushed reviews, as I really wanted to dig deep into what worked well and also compare what was lacking. After spending about 70 hours with Octopath Traveler, I'll give my thoughts on the game's main features, and hopefully it will help some of you who are on the fence about purchasing it. If you like the format of this review, share it with someone or leave a comment below, and consider subscribing if you found this helpful. This will also be a non-spoiler review, with some video highlighting the main features, briefly describing the initial story, and some endgame content I describe in the review. First, let's get into the art direction, since that is what initially sets the game apart on the surface. If you're watching this review, then you're most likely already a fan of the 16 or 32-bit retro-style graphics, as it may put off players who don't have the nostalgia for this era. The art style wasn't the main selling point for me, but the still images don't do the game justice. While the characters are static and don't have much emotes to show expressions, what I enjoyed most was the beautiful environments in the game. Going from snow-covered mountaintops to vast deserts and beachside port towns all made use of the foreground and background in new ways to show how much detail went into the game. It's better looking than any 2D game I've ever played, and I loved going into battle seeing how the enemies transform, appearing larger than life and formidable. Even more satisfying was seeing the enemies disintegrate into a cloud of smoke after being defeated, very similar to how enemies vanish in Dragon Quest XI. I love the concept art and the still images that made it into the game, but wish there was more of it, even if it wasn't unlockable somewhere in the menu for completing achievements. Moving on to the combat, as you would expect, the game uses the traditional turn-based system with some added mechanics. Similar to Final Fantasy X, there is an indicator at the top of your screen showing the order of who will be attacking, for the current turn and also the upcoming turn. Together with the breaking mechanic, this added a layer of complexity that kept battles more engaging. Each enemy in the game has a variety of weaknesses to different types of magic and physical weapons. When you attack an enemy with their weakness, their armor value goes down by 1, and once the armor goes down to 0, their defense is broken and skip what remains of their current turn as well as their entire next turn. During this state, you also deal much more damage with all your attacks. An additional mechanic that plays a vital role is the BP system, and you gain 1 BP per turn and can hold up to 5. You can consume BP up to 3 a turn to attack multiple times or level up your spells to do more damage. Once you use any amount of BP, you will not gain BP for the next turn, so there is value in knowing when to attack multiple times to break an enemy's armor or save up your BP to do a devastating attack once your enemy's armor is already broken. While my least liked feature of old JRPGs is the random battles, you do learn skills early on to reduce the frequency of battles or the success of running away. This leads me to the skill and job system. Each character, whether it's the one you start with or recruit later into your party, starts with a specific job. These include the scholar, merchant, thief, clerk, hunter, apothecary, warrior, and dancer. After battles, along with experience and gold, you gain job points. These job points are spent to unlock abilities and skills. Skills unlock after you learn a specific number of abilities for that class, and each character can equip up to 4 skills total regardless of what job they currently are. You will be able to unlock jobs by finding shrines located around the map during the game. You can't change your original job, but you can equip a second job of your choice. So for example, you could have a warrior as your primary and a cleric as your secondary if you choose, allowing you to learn and use healing abilities. However, you can't equip the same secondary job on more than one character at a time, so you can't have a full party that is able to use cleric abilities. You will be able to unlock the original 8 class jobs pretty easily if you know where to look. There are also endgame jobs, which are among the toughest enemies in the game to unlock, with an additional 4 jobs including the Sorcerer, Rune Lord, War Master, and Starseer. With the addition of these jobs, the game gets even more depth and customization. As long as you have enough job points to spend, you can unlock and equip any skills from other jobs. Some skills such as doing more than 9,999 damage, reducing mana cost, or healing above your maximum health can make some of the more difficult battles a breeze. But since you could only equip up to 4 skills at a time, you always feel you need to make trade-offs and you will be switching them out to experiment on their effectiveness. The downside is that I didn't encounter this added complexity until more than halfway into the game, which was about 35 hours in. If you don't naturally run into these job shrines, which happened in my case because I was primarily going from town to town, I felt limited in which party members I needed to have in my party at all times. For example, I tended to stick with my scholar, who I started the game with so he could not be removed from the party, my cleric, who is the most effective healer, the merchant, who I needed to gain additional money from battles, and the thief, who has the talent to steal and open locked chests that made it easier to get better items. When I needed to progress the story of a character who was not in my main party, they were always far below the level because characters not in your party do not level up. In the early game, there's no choice but to have them in your party and grind enemies to boost them up for the additional HP and stats they receive. Otherwise, they would be one-shotted by many bosses' attacks. While the map isn't too detailed, you'll be able to notice where shrines are by looking at the same symbols that appear on your map. Each story chapter for each character has a recommended level, and I was trying to get my characters close to that before starting it, but later on in the game I was able to have the character's level much below the required level as long as I equipped the low level character with the best equipment and accessories to make up for the level gap. That is another thing about the game that I did really enjoy. Leveling up your character does give you more HP and stats, but a majority of your character's stats come from equipment, and equipment is not restricted by character level. There are weapon restrictions for classes such as the scholars using a staff and thieves using daggers, but this also worked well because it encourages you to balance your weapon types and spells in your party to break the enemy's armor. Because your weapons and armor are essential to your survival, you will spend a lot of time trying to get more money to spend on the next upgrade. Returning to what I previously mentioned about story chapters and recommended levels, I want to go into how the story progresses. Other than the art style that sets this game apart, the 8 characters and 8 stories are also the cornerstone of this game's concept. It might sound confusing at first to think that there are 8 different stories in the game, but it plays out more simply. Essentially, each character has 4 chapters in their complete story. You can start with any character and will automatically be introduced to that character's first chapter. After you complete the first chapter, you will be shown on the map where the second chapter begins. Each chapter has a recommended level, such as 1, 15, 30, and 45. And as I mentioned previously, you can start at any level, lower or higher. While you're making your way to the different towns, you will encounter other characters which you can speak to and start their first chapter as well. You will naturally tend to complete each character's first chapter as it will help you level up to the next recommended level to begin chapter 2 of a character's story. Or you can choose to only recruit 3 characters to fill your party of 4, as you can choose not to play a character's first chapter and in turn not have them join your party. There's also nothing I could see from preventing you from going it alone, but I can imagine it being extremely hard and time-consuming to complete the game with only your starting character. Each story chapter lasts about 1 hour, which involves starting in a town, talking to townsfolk, incorporating the use of your special talent, and going into a dungeon-type area to kill a boss character before returning to town. The special talent depends on your character's starting job, with the scholar being able to inquire to get information out of the townspeople, or the thief being able to steal, with the chance of success based on the character's level. While the special talents do give a reason to use other party members, as side quests involve using their different talents, half of these are reused in pairs of characters such as the warrior and hunter, cleric and dancer, scholar apothecary, and the merchant thief. I would have liked to see all 8 classes having distinct talents to add to the variety. Regarding the quality of each story, because you have 4 chapters each lasting about an hour, each character's story is about 4 hours long. There's not much you can do to develop a captivating story in 4 hours, but I was surprised how satisfying they were by the end. Honestly, the first and second chapters do begin slow, and there were a few weeks I lost interest in the game because those chapters do begin slowly and feel generic. However, once you get to the third and fourth chapters, the characters, the voice acting, gets leaps and bounds better.
You would insist on meddling until the very last. Why did it have to be you? Why? You and your ilk bring nothing but misery to this world. But it ends today. Today, the dark flame feeds upon you!
There's a lot of use of flashbacks during these acts that reveal more of the motivation and character moments that get you more interested. So if you start the game and feel the same as I did, I encourage you to push through since it does get much better during the second half. I felt that the villains in each character's arc were more interesting than the main characters themselves, as they felt more complex and flawed, whereas your main characters are all morally unwavering with everything working out in their favor by the end. With 8 distinct stories, it doesn't feel as memorable as one cohesive story. There isn't a feeling of a catastrophic event or an entity that is threatening the world, but instead focuses on more smaller, personal stories for each character. These include the merchant searching for something she treasures, the apothecary on a mission to heal people who are suffering, or the dancer who is seeking revenge for a loved one. Unfortunately, you don't get the feeling that the members of the party are working together towards a bigger goal or have a vested interest in helping each other, and why they are ultimately traveling together in the first place. There are optional dialogue scenes incorporated where members of your party will interact, but because the story chapters only involve that specific character, it doesn't feel like there is any genuine connection between your party members. While having 8 different stories within a game is unique, I would have preferred if they developed less stories with more depth, chapters, and something tying them all together. While the overall stories are satisfying, there is only so much you can do with 4 hours per character. So essentially with 8 characters and 4 hours each, there are about 32 hours of story content, which is about half the time I spent with the game. You will spend more time exploring regions of the map. Once you travel to a town, you can fast travel back to it instantly, directly from the map. Other than the shrines allowing you to unlock jobs, you will also encounter various dungeons. They all have treasures to be found, and some others will also have a strong boss at the end, often related to a side quest. Like story chapters, dungeons also have suggested levels, but the game doesn't prevent you from challenging yourself to enter. Sometimes you will find the boss at the end way out of your league, but other times you may find that once you know the boss's weaknesses and attack patterns, you can take them on even if you are far below their level. Side quests are another thing that you can spend your time doing, which will also benefit you by rewarding you with money and items. I felt the side quest system was lacking, as all of them were nowhere as interesting as the main quest and wasn't as guided as the main quests. While there was a side quest log to keep track, I never felt compelled to complete side quests, as their main tasks tended to be stealing, inquiring, or defeating something found all the way across the map. I can't finish talking about highlights without mentioning the music. As you would expect from a Square Enix or Final Fantasy title, the music is beautiful and the soundtrack is top-notch. The music will cut out when scenes are tense, and the battle music will ramp up to get you hyped for an encounter. Overall, the sound, voice acting, and music are memorable. Voice acting is only present in about a third of the main cutscenes, with short, repeatable comments used over dialogue boxes. Sometimes, these comments don't exactly match the scene, but I do appreciate it compared to not having it at all.
Most unfortunate.
Excuse me.
This leads me to my biggest complaint with the game, which is the fact that all the depths and best parts are only highlighted during the second half of the game. For example, the best bosses and the best jobs are not encountered until the end of the game. It was in one of these optional bosses that after more than 30 minutes, I had to risk dealing damage versus healing, knowing that I could wipe if I couldn't defeat it this turn. Applying buffs to your party, debuffs to the enemy, identifying weaknesses, and waiting to break your opponent all came to head in these tougher battles. Similar to the gameplay, the story also takes some time to get interesting. To get a satisfying build-up to the characters of the game, you first have to get through the first 30 or so hours that aren't as enjoyable. There are times where I was grinding for experience or gold for hours that dragged on the overall experience. However, I generally don't mind leveling characters in RPGs, and in this game I was always rewarded with gold or job points to improve my characters. I do find games I put more time into more satisfying when I finally complete it, and I never felt the game was too easy, which is a complaint I have with many other games. One of my biggest criticisms of the game industry, and specifically mainstream review sites, is that many do not complete the entire game before reviewing it. If you asked me what I thought of the game halfway through, only experiencing half of the story, I would have said the game was mediocre and wasn't worth the hype. But after about 70 hours, and beating the toughest content, I can definitely say that this game is worth it to those who enjoy traditional RPGs. While it does start slow, by the end I was surprised to see that the mechanics that started out simple had grown in complexity, allowing for freedom to customize your character, and somehow making 8 distinct stories feel satisfying by the end. I hope you all enjoyed this review, and an extra thank you for those who made it to the end. While I haven't been consistent with the videos, There are more games I'm excited to play and make videos for soon. Let me know any feedback to improve the quality of my videos, and I know there's a lot. I hope you all have a happy holiday season, and Happy New Year.